It's integrity, man. You do what you say you're going to do and you do it to the best of your ability. And when you do that over time, your competition is going to fall off because some issue is going to come up that they're maybe not going to solve the way that your referral partner wishes they had. And now it gets you a leg up.
Well, I'm very excited for the podcast today. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So Brandon Barnum, he's the CEO of the FAM Project. I think that's saying it lightly. You have quite the resume. There's been a lot you've accomplished in your career, and I know we'll dive into it, from refer.com to an incredible business, which we'll talk about today, as far as $500 million in referrals and helping over 5 million people, to get their own customer referrals. And so before we get into that, you have anyone watching video, you have unity through community. Walk me through that philosophy, that mantra you have over you.
Well, I think community is the new currency. I think the reality is we live in these neighborhoods where we, in many cases, don't know our neighbors. And really since 2020, people feel more disconnected than ever. And so I'm personally on a mission to help people feel more connected and get into community where they're doing life with people they love, whether that's neighbors you live next door to or just people that you really resonate with and share values with.
I love that comment. I've heard that a couple of times. Community is the new currency because, as AI is coming into things, right? You see, as you mentioned, COVID, the pandemic changed things. People's network. I remember I had a coach. I did track and cross country in high school, and I remember my coach told me as a freshman, he's like, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." I didn't even know what that meant. As a freshman, at 45 years old now, it's like I kind of have a little bit better feel that. Yes, life is a lot about, opportunity and luck, but, there's hard work, there's diligence, there's doing hard things that put you in those positions. But really, as you meet certain people, as you build this community, there's a lot of resources out there that can, escalate you to the next level.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about AI. I think AI is even dividing us even further, but that's a whole different topic and conversation. But the reality is people as humans, we're wired. God created us to want to connect, to be in relationship and in community. And I think most people aren't real intentional about the communities that they participate in. Some are, others aren't. And the goal is really just to help people come together and with a common purpose, common passion, and, share our lives together the way that God intended.
I love that because, really what you speak to is like you're trying to bring value to people. It's not, hey, I'm becoming friends with you, Brandon, because there's something you can get me or put me in front of a certain group. I think a lot of us in business, a lot of my listeners, include myself, business development is really difficult, right? Trying to go, especially as a builder. Here's, for me, every client's new. I have to pound the pavement. Like this is a constant thing. How have you found success in your career to leverage your customer base, to use existing customers and leverage them, to, just increase your business?
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you asked this conversation. I started out kind of my origin story in my 20s. I found out you don't have to be married to have a kid. At the age of 22, I had my first child. At the age of 24, I had full custody and I was a single dad. And it makes you get real focused real fast. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, I was making $20,000 a year, and it just wasn't enough I had bought a house. It wasn't enough to pay my mortgage and pay daycare. So I had to make a change, and I ended up getting in the mortgage business. And I had somebody that mentored me in the art and science of what I now call raving referrals. Mm-hmm. But I learned back then the importance of partnering with other professionals and business owners who are serving your perfect prospects every day. And I teach you want to be the solution to the challenges that your clients come to other people with, right? So with you as a builder, what does that look like? Well, they may be talking to real estate agents, right? Financial advisors, people that are working, and you do a lot of luxury homes, right? So people that are serving that affluent marketplace. When you provide your services as a solution to the challenges that they're facing, then they naturally will recommend you because you're helping the people that they want to help. So I just learned ages ago that that's the solution, is partnering with others and really building your businesses together.
Well, and I totally understand that philosophy because really as you're solving pain points, right? Again, going back to that value proposition, like it's going to be a lot easier for people to, put their clients who they trust in your hands. But one of the challenges, Brandon, I would imagine for you, especially early on in your career, is you may know a realtor, you may know a broker, you may know of, these contacts in the industry, but they may not pick up the phone for you to call them. They may have their guy, their gal, someone they're already working with. How have you been able to break through, to some people that may be resistant to, hey, I already have a builder, Brad, I don't need to refer you?
Yeah, well, so normally when I started in the mortgage business, it was about being in the top three, right? Because back then, this is late 90s, realtors would give three business cards of the lenders. And I just wanted to make the top three, right? We just had the Olympics. So I wanted to be on the podium first and foremost. Once you're on the podium, man, you're getting a medal. So you're in the game. Now you got a chance to win. Now it's about moving from third up to first. And how do you do that? Well, you continually add value and you impress the clients that they do send you with your professionalism, your follow through, your follow up, and it's integrity, man. You do what you say you're going to do and you do it to the best of your ability. And when you do that over time, your competition is going to fall off because some issue is going to come up that they're maybe not going to solve the way that your referral partner wishes they had, and now it gets you a leg up. So just first make it to the podium and then you can win the gold.
See, and it's interesting. Yeah, you just have to be in the conversation, right? At some point, get an intro. How did you refine maybe your communication skills early on to, yeah, now you're on the podium, you're getting an intro. How do you differentiate yourself as a mortgage lender? Because I mean, these are numbers, right? Is there personality? Is it communication? I mean, what are things that you found in your business that were a selling point for you to use to capture these clients?
Well, back then, so I always believe in adding value beyond what other people are doing. And I'm a visionary. So what I did back in the late 90s is I created an early version of Zillow. I realized that real estate was going online. And at that point, only half of national real estate firms had a website. And if they did have a website and they did have a listing, usually they didn't have any photos of the property. If they did, they'd have one exterior front facing photo, street view. And I'm like, this is silly. I want to sit in my home in my boxers and be able to view homes that are out there for sale. And so that's what we did. We created back then. It took a ton of time to load the website because we'd have 6, 8, 10 photos of a property. And now it's like, well, man, you can have 30 to 50 photos of a property. But back then, that wasn't the norm. So that's where I started. I created an online home buyer guide. And then I went to real estate agents that I wanted to win their business from. And I said, hey, I'd like to feature your listing at pdxhome.com, which was the website, almost 30 years ago. And so that's what I did. I added value to them. And I said, by the way, this can help you win more listings. If you go into a listing presentation, mention to your sellers that you can get their property featured online. And this was back in Portland, Oregon. We were called Silicon Forest back then because we had Intel, Tektronix, and some other companies. So what I did is targeted those high-tech organizations because I knew they had employees that were on the internet. And so every Sunday, I'd go around and post a sign that said, buying a home, visit pdxhome.com. I started attracting the buyers directly. Then I was able to give referrals out to the realtors that I was working with. And by adding that much value, I quickly became that number one lender.
See, and I think that's really important because so many times we want things to come to us. Hey, I meet you at a networking event. Here's my card. Like, remember me next time. But you made a comment there at the end. You said, look, yeah, of course, you know the value of putting things online at a time in the 90s where, I mean, I'm old enough to remember this. I'm in high school and I didn't know anyone with the internet, to connect to your dial up, to your ring, and the phone would be busy. Someone called me, but it was like AOL, and you get these CDs for a free amount of hours, so you pay for it. But the internet wasn't what it is today, right? Where everyone has a smartphone. So, but what's interesting for you is you actually now are bringing referrals to the sales agents, to the realtors, that they have lead generation from you. And you're not trying to be a broker realtor. You're not trying to take on the business. And that's where it changes because now that you're bringing leads to them, that synergy really happens.
Huge. And what they would all say is, wow, none of my other mortgage lenders ever send me opportunities. Right. And so it's a huge differentiator. That's how you get to number one on the podium, by the way, is add more value than anybody else. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. There are companies and there are professionals that are serving your perfect prospects every day. So rather than doing direct mail or ads online, even Facebook ads, if you focus on relationships, the people that have authority and influence over the customers that you want to serve, I've found that's the best way to win business.
How do from the raving reviews portion, I understand how your network, how they could be raving reviews of you and give you the referrals you need to bring business to your plate. But what about from the clients that you've worked with? How do you leverage clients that have been through your process, through your organization, Brandon, and now, they're clients for life?
Yeah, I love that you just mentioned clients for life. I was just having that conversation because we just registered lifetimeclient.agency. So we're going to create some digital services there. But what I teach people is the art of the ask. What I find is the number one reason that people don't get more referrals is they don't ask for referrals. And if they do ask, they wait till the very end of a transaction or a service experience, and then they ask. And in my opinion, that's too late. When you really want to ask for referrals is right when they've decided to hire you. So let's take your business, for example, right? They've decided to build a home with you. Then as soon as they've made that decision and declaration, what I would do is I would say, thank you so much. We really appreciate this opportunity and we don't take it lightly. We're committed to creating a 5-star experience where you're going to rave about us to everybody you know. So I'd like to ask you a favor, if I may, which is once we've proven ourselves to you and we have just wowed you with the 5-star service that we pride ourselves on, would it be okay to ask you for referrals at a later date? When you do that, 100% of people say yes, because you're not putting them on the spot. You're not asking them to do anything right now. In fact, what you're doing is doubling down on your delivery of excellence, right? You're committing yourself to providing an exceptional customer experience, which is what everybody wants. But the beauty of doing that at the beginning of the relationship is now that reticular activator starts to work. And as you're starting to serve them, they're thinking all the way, wow, Brad does an amazing job. This is awesome. You're going to find you're going to get some referrals right at the beginning because they'll say, now that you mentioned it, I have a brother, sister, client, coworker that's looking to build a home right now. And so let me connect you. So you'll get some referrals right at the beginning, but that's step one. We call that setting the stage. You want to set the stage when a client first hires you. Step two is to listen for the referral triggers. And referral triggers could be, wow, thanks so much. This looks so great. I feel so great. I've lost so much weight. I've made so much money. You've helped me save so much time. Thank you so much. You're really listening for an expression of appreciation. That's a referral trigger because now they've already agreed to refer you in the future. When they compliment you, they're in a peak referral state. They've just said, you've done a great job. And that's when you want to go into step three, which is to ASK to GET. That's how my mentor, Mark Victor Hansen, taught me. You got to ask to get. So then what you do is you say, man, I am so glad to hear you say that, Brad. I love helping people like you get this result or have an amazing home like this. So remember, we first started working together. I mentioned to you that basically my business is driven by referral, looking to take on a couple of clients or serve a couple of families, however you phrase that for your business. Is there anybody that you know of right now that's thinking about fill in the blank with your service? And what that does is you've already got the agreement up front. They've given you a compliment, that referral trigger. Now you're asking at the right time in the right way, and that will lead to more referrals for your business.
See what I love about that. I mean, how this applies to me and probably some other people listening. My relationship with my client is very long, right? And so you think at least for me at this point in my career, I'm 12 to 24 months in pre-construction, and then
Mhm.
vertical construction, that's design, right? Get to
Right.
permit and working through all the selections. And then vertical construction is typically 24 months. I mean, these are 3, 4, 5 year relationships with my clients.
Right.
And yeah, in a perfect world, by the end of that, this marriage between us, we have this great relationship as we've got to the end, right? And in some cases, that's where we're at. And, they're going to be a client for life, repeat client. And sometimes they get a little worn out, I guess you could say, depending on how good our process was or our temperament. But what I'd say is what's interesting is, throughout that process, there's a lot of time, my clients are entrepreneurs, right? You're around
Right.
people that are successful. And a lot of them will, to your point, will ask, hey, Brad, how's the economy? How are the trades? How's the forecast? What does it look like in your market? What's construction? And as you were talking, I'm like, one thing I've never done is capitalize that in the sense, saying, you made a comment, you said, I'm looking to take on a few clients right now, right?
That's right.
And it would be easy for me at that point to say, this is someone who typically, if they're having this question with me, they're happy with the build. And,
Yeah.
I can think of recently, I had a client just a few months ago that was super happy. He's complimenting the super and the process and everyone, and was asking me how business is for me. And that would have been perfect. Hey, we're actually looking to fill a couple spots. And so I think that's incredibly valuable advice for anyone listening.
Well, and think about your vendors, right? Most people think about their vendors, and that's what they call them. Even realtors, they call them my vendors,
Yeah.
right?
Or trade
Rather than
partners.
my referral partners, people
Yeah.
that are committed to doing business with you, scouting for clients for you while you scout for clients for them. If you really build your business, and you probably have a list of 50 to 100 subs that you hire to do your projects, are any of them scouting for business for you? Have you created a referral rewards program? Hey, just want to let you know, if you end up referring any clients my way, we pay out a $5,000 reward, whatever is appropriate and applicable for your business. And there might be some people listening where it might be $20 or $100, or, it just depends on your lifetime client value. But I think about your homes, like you help somebody complete their home, and maybe what you want to do, Brad, is integrate like an open house, a grand opening when the house is complete, where you help sponsor the party, and that way they're bringing all of their affluent and influential friends into their home to see it for the first time, and you help throw the party. That way you've got your pop-up banner there. Maybe you've got some folders or brochures with your information. And when their people who are your perfect prospects show up, they're going to be impressed with the quality of work. They've already got that credibility because you've delivered for their friend that they can ask questions about. So you have completely raised your status from any other builder that they've met.
It's phenomenal, Brandon. And because the thing is, when you think about, a project, if I were to ask you right now, if you're my client and say, hey, do you have any friends building? They may not. I mean, there's so much that goes into building a custom home. Do you have land? Are you positioned financially? Like, are you at that stage of life? But what's interesting is when you think about that door opens to have an open house, and now you're inviting 30, 40 people through and having this intimate party and this one-on-one, that's where, again, you're planting seeds much greater than you, Brandon, telling a friend, hey, we had a great experience with Brad Hiram. It's now them seeing it. They're like, that seed's planted, that they're like, well, maybe I want to build now. Maybe I want to put myself in this position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now you're getting them thinking where they hadn't thought about it before, but now that they see the result and the quality of work that you've created, now you get the wives talking, especially, right? And that's where the wives end up as the buyers in most relationships, don't they?
They do. And honestly, if you look at my client demographic as we track this stuff, it's always the wise, right?
Yeah.
Um, the first point you made, I thought was also interesting because you mentioned to ask for, it's setting the stage. You said ask for the referral early on. And,
Right.
you know, but you made a comment, you said, with this caveat, right? If we perform. So if we perform and we're going to deliver and you're seeing that, then we love that referral. And I think, again, going back to my situation, this long pipeline, there is value to asking for that early on.
Yeah, and what happens is now, as you're going through that customer experience, you get all kinds of opportunities to mention that again, right? Oh, we just started working for this client over here. We're doing a project that's got some similarities, and you can weave that into your conversations. And when you've got approval early on, it constantly keeps the conversation going, right? And you've set the stage, you've let them know that you get most of your business by referral, right? We don't spend on advertising because what typically happens is our clients love what we create for them. And they're so thrilled to show it off that once they do, all of their friends want to talk to us too. And they're like, oh, yeah, I can see that, right? So you got to tell the story that you want them to buy into. And it's all rooted in truth. You never speak anything that isn't authentic and accurate. But that's true for you, isn't it? When people see your homes that you've designed, they often tell their friends, don't they, Brad?
Oh, they always do. Absolutely. Especially to your point, anytime you have a finished product and people walk in and they can see the finished details and the furnished, like it, it completely is a game changer. That's why around the country, you see people do these pray to homes, right? Because for a week or two, they'll bring a lot of people through, and it's a huge, business development opportunity. As you think back to your career, Brandon, as you think about process and training and implementation, and the reason I say that, because for you, as you mentioned, you start making 20 grand to the point that again, not your net worth, but you help to achieve $500 million worth of referrals. I mean, so whatever your salary ended up being, whatever the referral business, your business is growing. And so now there's pain points because yes, you're providing value through PDX, through the online, realty. But now as clients start to pour in and the referrals start to pour in, you have to perform or it quickly vanishes. Was there a tipping point for you in your career when you realized, hey, okay, I need to figure out how am I training my people so as they represent me that we're on board to capture all these referrals that are coming in?
Yeah, definitely. So I went from being a loan officer to a mortgage broker where I had my own firm back in Portland, Oregon, and I had about 30 loan officers working for us. We had multiple branches. And so I was faced with that very challenge, right? Of how do I create the system? And, one of my fails, I love telling this story, but I had this VP for Intel who had been a client for years. He had done several deals with me and I'd helped him buy his home and a vacation home and refinance and all that. Well, he referred a client to me a couple months back, and he calls me up one day and he says, hey, Brandon, I just want to check in and see what's going on with, we'll call him Mike Owens, right? And I'm like, oh, it was fantastic. We just helped Mike close on his refinance a couple weeks ago. Thanks again for the referral. And then there was this long, awkward pause. And he comes back and he says, are you open to some coaching? And, I'm probably 33 years old at this point. This guy's 53. And I said, yeah, of course. Coaching is the breakfast of champions, right? And he says, number one, when somebody refers a client to you, it's a really good idea to thank them. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, did I not thank this guy? Like if it had been a referral partner, I would have thanked them all day long, right? If it's a realtor, financial planner, builder, I would have gone above and beyond to praise them and thank them. And I just hadn't put it together at that point in my career that I needed to do the same with my clients that had sent me business. So that was number one, is it's a really good idea to thank them. And then he says, number two, it's also a good idea to update them and keep them informed of what happens with the clients that they send to you. And I felt like I had the biggest capital L on my forehead. I just felt like I had totally missed the boat. And I thanked him for his coaching. And what I did was I immediately printed up thank you cards that were, my company was called Integrity Lending at that point. And so I had thank you cards that were pre-printed that literally said, thank you for referring. And then there was a blank line so my loan officers could put in the name of the person that they had referred. Now, I taught them it's even better to do a fully handwritten card, but at least we had a system in place now where they could send out a gift card and thank the people that referred them business. So that was like a big aha moment. There's been so many others, but that was where I started realizing some of these gaps in the business.
It's funny how that takes place. I look at one of my turning points at AFT was a client that I'd built for. And again, we had a good relationship. And he said, are you open to some advice? Same thing, I'm sure. And he, there were a few things he pointed out, probably similar to you. I'm like, yeah, I can make those changes tomorrow and it's going to make a huge impact. I think, the update is fascinating to me because I think so many times in life, for us in any business, I always tell my team we need to play offense and not defense. And staying ahead of it and updating, it allows us to be in a position where we're not being micromanaged. Or in your case, when you have a referral, it shows that, hey, you care enough, to update the, the referral. Walk to us, refer.com. What was that venture?
Yeah, so refer.com. So I started a tech company called Trusted Team. And Trusted Team was a platform to help people that were doing business by referral. And basically, the left hand side was your profile, kind of like your LinkedIn profile. And then the right hand side of your personal referral page were your vendors. These are the people that I know I can trust and recommend. I end up merging that company with another company, and we launched refer.com. And it was a B2B, basically, SaaS platform, software as a service for people growing their business by referral. We ended up growing that. We made a couple acquisitions, and we grew that to over 5 million business owners and professionals all over the world. We had clients in Antarctica. I'm like, who is in Antarctica trying to build their business by referral? But somebody's selling snowshoes and shovels, I guess. But so that was great. We built that up to over 5 million folks, and then we exited that in 2019.
It's incredible. Like the passion of entrepreneurship, where does that come from?
I was born this way, honestly. I remember watching infomercials as a kid. At 12 years old, I took a public bus about an hour to some hotel to listen to some guy from TV talk about tax lien certificates. So
Wait, how old were you?
Some of us are just built different.
You said at 12?
12 years old.
I'm sorry, I laughed, but at 12 on tax liens, like how does that even come up at 12 years old?
It was on an infomercial. I'm, watching an infomercial at night, and they're talking about how you can get rich and make money, and I'm like, oh, I can get to that hotel. I want to learn more. My buddies are playing, baseball or basketball or video games, and I'm in a hotel at a conference. Pretty funny.
It's actually quite funny because, again, this has nothing to do with our conversation. But as you said that, it reminded me because at 12, I feel like that's so young. I definitely didn't know what taxes were at 12, but I can tell you when I was like 18, I remember going to a Padre game. Like I grew up in San Diego, so I was
nice.
Baseball fan with my friends. And we had all just started working. I worked a little bit in high school. I did, I was an electrician and stuff. But, you're getting your paycheck. We're talking about taxes. And I remember this guy behind us probably got sick of us talking about taxes for 30 minutes. He's all, you young guys need to shut up. Like, you don't know anything about taxes. Talk to me when you start signing the front side of checks. And I was like, what does that even mean? At the time. And I was like, later in life, when you sign the front side of a check, a business check, you have a little bit of understanding what business operations are. But, at 12, again, you mentioned, being a young father, unexpected, you're a single dad. I would imagine there's some motivation there. But to continue that push to be entrepreneurship, and now we, with the FAM project, the CEO, I want to talk about that, how that career has led you to this point.
Well, look, God's design is always perfect. And so he's led me through a series of ventures that have led me to this point. With the FAM project, we're really focused on a couple of things, but the biggest being breaking digital addiction. The reality is that so many of our kids these days, and all of us too, are just addicted to technology, right? So we're constantly on our phones instead of spending time with the people that we love. And so our goal is to really help people do more things with people that they love in the real world. We're launching a look up campaign because normally when we're on a digital device, we're looking down instead of looking into the eyes of the people that we love. But 90% of a child's brain development happens before they're 5 years old, and between cyberbullying and sexploitation, and then the porn addiction that's come. What's crazy is that 20% of the kids that are 18 or lower that are experiencing porn are 10 or younger. So these babies are seeing these graphic images, and that's what they think intimacy is. And so anyway, we're on a mission to break that. We're doing it through a mobile app, ironically, but to help families find out about events and deals and discounts, things that are happening in the real world right around them so that they can put down the phones and go live life at experiences and events that they love with the people that they love.
How did you put together the group? I mean, where does this passion come from?
Well, I've actually joined. So Jason Howells is the founder of the FAM Project. I was just brought on board recently as the CEO. So this wasn't a venture I started. He's been on this mission for years. I had been running HOA.com, and in our conversations, I've been focused on communities, which are made up of families. And Jason and I have been working for years to figure out the overlap and how do we really come together. And at the end of last year, I brought on a new CEO of HOA.com to free me up to come lead the FAM project. And it's a really important mission. So couldn't be more thrilled to be here.
Well, I love, you mentioned that with the digital addiction that, so many of us, you're ingrained in your phone, you're busy. I know at times I'm a big offender in this, and, as my kids have gotten older, they're good about pointing that out with dad, that, hey, work will still be there. But early in the very beginning of our conversation, you spoke about the, communities, that's the new currency. And, I think today there's a lot of value to that, as far as when you say, so many of us are not looking up and maybe noticing, maybe it is our kids, maybe it's our spouse, maybe it's, other, important things happen around us and we're blind to it.
Oh, it's huge. Go to your phone and into the settings and look at your screen time. You probably get a report once a week with your screen time. And compare that to the amount of time that you're spending with your family in real conversations, right? And we model things for our kids. We can't say, put down your phone when we're staring at it ourselves. And as entrepreneurs, it's tough, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're constantly dealing with issues, questions that come up and things that need to be dealt with. But, I knew at an early age, again, being a parent at 22 and having full custody at 24. And fortunately, I had met my wife in between. So my wife and I have now been together for over 32 years. But when we raised our kids together, we had no phones at the dinner table. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a number of years ago, right? When it wasn't as popular. There wasn't like a conversation around that back then. We just knew we wanted to be connected to our kids. And then at nighttime, we had them put their phones in the chargers downstairs so they weren't up all night distracted with these devices. And this is long before a lot of the darkness that's crept into our mobile phone access these days. But it's just so important that we model the behavior that we want our kids to embrace. And if you want them to look up, you got to look up first.
It's fascinating, and as you speak about technology again, I mean, this is something that's really important. Is you have an app, like you're still adapting technology. There's ways to adapt it and use that to your benefit, but at the same time, there's caution, there's boundaries, as you mentioned with your kids. How you set that up. How do you see technology changing based on just human interaction, how you run your business? You mentioned AI coming into this. How do you see things changing? Maybe not for the negative to be Debbie Downer, but the realization of what's out there and what's happening and how we can, I'm sure that's why you're starting this, came into this venture and you're passionate about it.
Well, full disclosure, I'm an eternal optimist. Okay. So while I see the dangers,
you have to be.
Right. Yeah. If you don't have faith in your life, man, being an entrepreneur is tough. So, it's interesting. The first AI platform I built was back in 2019. After we exited Refer.com, I was brought on as a CEO of a company called Codebreaker. We created this AI tool that helps you decode someone's personality. And we had a Chrome extension that we built. So you could take somebody's LinkedIn profile and in one click, in 1 second, you could understand how they think, how they speak, what is important to them. And this was an AI platform that we built 7 years ago. And to see the growth of AI, it's only going to continue to accelerate and proliferate. And we're not far away from robotization, right? So soon we're going to have robot servants. And I know this sounds weird for a lot of people, but that movie, like iRobot, that's the world that we're growing into. So I'm committed to this, right? To being close to the family. I think we're coming to a point as a society, as a species, where there's going to be less demand on our time. We're going to have more free time to do what we want, more tools to create what we want quickly, easily, and inexpensively. Like as entrepreneurs, we've never had the tools that we have today. We're building an AI into Fam Central, and this is on the business side, but literally it's got a plug-in into a Zoom call where, number one, it will coach you with closing questions. If you're in a sales conversation, it will suggest questions that you should ask your prospect live during the call.
Wow.
After the call, it takes everything that was said in the call, it updates the CRM, tags the notes, takes any personal interest, anything that's of importance, and adds that to the customer account so that you can see that in the future. But better yet, and we're talking today, right now, this is what we're doing. We're actually finalizing beta testing on this in the month, next month. So we'll launch it in a couple of months. By the time this episode comes out, we should be pretty close to launching this. But then we think about the old days of marketing, right? And everybody thinks about funnel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Building funnels so that as you take people through stages, they're getting these auto sequence emails, text messages, maybe a voicemail broadcast. That's all well and good, but the future is custom communication. And so this AI tool that we're building will take that conversation, update the CRM, it changed the pipeline stages, which normally take salespeople time, and it takes them away from conversations with other humans while we update the computer systems. Well, this automates all of that, including creating a custom message for that individual to fix follow-up failure. Because the AI knows everything that was said in that conversation. It can write the email better, faster than you can. And now you can just review, approve, and send. So we don't want to put it on autopilot. We want to give it to you where you've got the ability to then review that messaging and go, yeah, that's perfect. Send, one click, couple of seconds. Or if you want to change the message, you'll be able to. But that's just the future. And that's now. That's what's happening right now. So as we continue to advance from a technology perspective, we're going to live in an agentic world. And a lot of businesses haven't really embraced it. They know they need to. They're not sure how to get started. But the reality is it's going to, I think, sales and support are going to get massively replaced. I think there's entire industries that won't exist by the year 2035. Definitely in 10 years from now, there's industries that are gone and other industries that will be dramatically reduced. Now, that's the downside. The good side is that we're going to have more time to do the things that we love with the people that we love. So that's the optimist, is that ultimately, and I think we're also more aware and intentional about what we're doing with our time. So if you are digitally addicted, start thinking about it, put the phone down and look up and talk to the people that you love.
I love that. There's a lot of directions to take this. I think, from like a business owner perspective, I find it tough at times, right? You're, not that you're just operating and putting out fires, but the thing is you're moving from one project to the next, like no matter what your business is, over and over, and you're kind of focusing on the next part. And so many times we don't go back and evaluate or do an autopsy on, the previous project or the previous venture, or to mention the previous sales call, and to see how did we handle things? Did we do it right? Did we communicate right? Is there a failure in our system? Do we need... So many of us are working in the business, not on the business, right?
That's right.
And to your point with this technology, as it's suggesting questions for you during the live sales call, to the point that when you're done, you're getting an AI transcript, and now you're seeing, hey, or maybe I could have taken this a different direction or performed better. You're getting live feedback, which is really what we need as business owners to make those corrective measures, for the best of the business.
Well, and it's not only an autopsy, right? An end of action report where it's analyzing after the fact. It's actually making recommendations real time in your conversation. Now, we're not on Zoom or on StreamYard, but literally it will recommend things to ask or say to move that conversation forward. And most business people suffer from follow-up failure, right? Mm-hmm. I love being in conversations like this. It lights me up. I have a great time. And if this was a sales call, where I have fallen short in the past, is following up with that client, not just one time, but over and over again, because in most client prospect relationships, it takes multiple touches to get the yes. And so a system like this will help automate that process. It's going to reduce your overhead. You're not going to have to pay as many people to be able to produce an even better result than you have in the past.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, to get people to say yes, I mean, every business is a little bit different. You know, how many points of sale, points of contact, till they become an actual client. What have you found when you look at maybe your team as you had your own mortgage brokerage, as you were hiring? What are things you look for in people and leadership and hiring to know that they'd be good performers or good at sales?
Great question. So one of the things that I learned, and you asked an earlier question, how do you learn about communication? Well, one of the life secrets that I've learned is something called bank code, and it actually comes from the book Why They Buy. So it's a personality system that comes from the book Why They Buy. And what happens was this author and creator of the system realized that we all have these personalities, right? And there's four main blocks of personalities, whether you're talking Myers-Briggs or DISC or any types of these systems. We always want to profile people so we understand who they are and where they fit in best. So we've used some really great tools like that. Bank Code is a great system, especially in sales, because I actually carry these cards with me anytime I go anywhere to a real event. And I'll ask people, do you want to see a magic trick? 100% of people have said yes to this. No one's ever said no, because of course we want to see a magic trick, right? So then I hand the cards to someone and I'll say, do me a favor, read the information on the cards, sort the cards in order of what's most like you to least like you. That will help me serve you better and save us both time. And then I shut up and I let them do it, right? And typically in 30 or 60 or 90 seconds, they'll hand them back to me. And I was doing this at an event not long ago, and I did exactly that. I was talking to a guy at the end of the conference, and I said, what's super cool about this is normally within about 3 minutes of meeting someone, they think, wow, that guy gets me. And just as I had said that, one of the speakers from this AI conference came over and she said, hey, I want to see a magic trick. And I said, great. I hand her the cards. I say the spiel. She sorts them in 30 seconds. She hands them back to me. Her number one card was action, right? So she's high action. And I took 60 seconds to describe who she just told me she was. And in 90 seconds of meeting this woman, she turns to the guy I was just talking to and she says, wow, he gets me. So that's a little life hack that I love. That's called Bank Code. You can check it out. You can utilize it. It's not really for hiring. I use it for first phase hiring, right? Because in all four of the codes, there's extroverts and there's introverts. There's people that love to be in communication and there's people that rather be in analysis, right? So you got to put the right people in the right seats on the bus. So we'll use Bank Code in an initial job offering if we're posting on Indeed or something like that, just so that we can sort from 100 applicants down to 40. But then in that, we do like Harrison assessments is probably the best actual tool that I've seen that matches a prospect for the position. So what Harrison Assessments does is they've categorized like 30,000 different jobs and industries, and they know the ideal personality style for that position. Somebody that's like, wow, I was born for this, right? This is a perfect fit for me. That's who you want. You don't want somebody that is feeling resistant. You want somebody that just shows up and they're living the life they love because they're doing the job they love.
See, I love that because, it's just, as you think about business, how complicated it is. I don't want to say I was resistant to it, but just yesterday we did a culture index, right? So similar. And again, not that I'm a skeptic, but so we had done this and Spencer, who's my director of operations, and Megan, for now, they just did the leadership team. And what's fascinating, this person who did it's never met me. Like we never had an interview. He's never heard my voice. I've never spoken to him. And so after the survey, like he's kind of going through the chart of who I am as a person. It's like dead on.
Wow, he gets me.
Yeah, he gets me, just like you're saying. It's like he gets me. So there's this instant connection, right? And then he does it for Megan and Spencer. And I've worked with them for 6-7 years. Spencer I've known for a long time. But point being is it was dead on. And what was interesting about it, as a business owner, there's so many tools out there. What you're speaking to, Brandon, is that if you want to really perform to the best level, we've all heard, get the right people on the bus and they get the people on the right seat. And yeah, it's easy to say that, or you can monitor through human interaction on where they should be. But the reality is there is something to the psychology of it. Like we did this survey, and now, especially in construction, you would see, hey, this person would perform very well as a superintendent or a coordinator, or to your point, they'd be a great employee or they'd be a great manager. Because sometimes people get promoted or moved up because of, longevity or how long they've been at the company. And, maybe they're performing at sales, but they've become a manager. And so, but the reality is there's so much that goes into that as opposed to just maybe duration,
Yeah.
performance. And you really have to look at all these different angles.
Huge, huge. I have a 22-year-old daughter. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was talking to her last night. She recently broke up with her boyfriend. And last night I said, knowing what you know now, do you wish you had broken up with him sooner? And she said, yeah. And so I said, in business, we have this strategy called slow to hire, quick to fire.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're hiring for culture. You talked about culture, so important that you've got people that share your culture. They share the values and the vision of the company. They're not just there to fill a seat on the bus. Quite frankly, they want to drive the bus to the promised land. But we've got to take our time to find the right people. And if you already have people that are on your team and you're like, this just isn't working out. Number one, look to see, maybe take some personality assessments and determine maybe there's a better role for them within the current team, or maybe they need to become a free agent. And sometimes as business owners, we feel uncomfortable about that. And maybe you just need to give them an opportunity to find the position they were created for.
I love that. I think it's great when you think about the role as a dad talking to your daughter. Do you wish you would have broken up sooner? I think that's funny because as a business owner, it's hard. You're emotionally attached. Like you worried about the well-being, you care about your people, and to just terminate someone. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. But to your point, if you're not guarding the company culture, your brand or product, there's a bigger downside as opposed to, maybe what's out there inevitably.
It's huge. I have a VA right now I have to have this conversation with, and this is not an executive on the team, but still somebody on the team. And we've recognized that it's just not working out. And I've tried multiple different attempts to empower them and equip them, and they're just not the right fit. So every week that goes by that we don't address that issue, we're impacting other people on the team. And me as a leader, I need to take action quickly so that people see that results matter. And while the people matter, if they're not the right teammate for the team, you're not going to have a championship team. I'm a fan of the Seahawks. Sorry.
Oh, good for you. Hey,
we did just celebrate. And what I love about this team is you look at any of the people that are on it, and all the players talk about the same thing. They created this MOB concept, mission over BS. Mm-hmm. And it's all about buying into the mission of holding the Lombardi trophy and nothing else matters, right? I mean, I don't mean to say nothing else matters, but that's the ultimate goal. And what they mean by that is the stats don't matter. Mm-hmm. You got a bunch of guys that on defense on other teams would be having twice as many sacks. But here they play a team concept, and the individual stats didn't matter. Lifting the Lombardi did, and that's culture.
See, I love that. And again, I mentioned I'm a Padre fan. As Padre fans, you hate the Dodgers your whole life. But the one, I know everyone gives them flack for how much money they spend. But one thing you have to give credit, because so many athletes get paid a lot and they don't perform. The money's tough. You make a lot of money. It's hard to maybe be motivated. But to your point, just like the Seahawks played, you look at the Dodgers. I mean, that's a team that the fundamentals, they did all the fundamentals, the culture, like all of them cared. They had amazing company culture. They all speak about that. It's hard to create that. And that's why I love sports, because there's so much crossover between sports and business.
Absolutely. It's so fun. And, we just recently watched the U.S. men's and the U.S. women's hockey teams hoist the gold. And, I think we all celebrated as a nation watching those things happen. And culture is a key to that, but it's also finding the all-stars, right? Those teams were assembled because they brought on the very best people that they could find for every position. They didn't just get average players. They found the best of the best. And when we're leading our business, we need to do the same.
So, as I divert this a little bit on you, Brandon, a lot of the conversation we've spoken about referrals, which we understand the value there and how you get those. You did a great job, explaining that. How important are reviews?
Reviews are huge. That's the social proof, right? And so part of the raving referrals process that we teach, there's 10 keys to raving referrals, and so we can walk through that. But reviews is one of those things. In that art of the ask, you can actually integrate reviews. Would you be willing to give us a review and referrals? And again, when you get them to agree early on, now they've committed to it, so it's easier to ask them at the end of the transaction, the client journey, which is what you want to do. But that's super huge because especially when people don't know you, they're going to look online and see what other people say about you. People don't care what you say about your business. They care about what other people say about your business. Now, couple of stats when it comes to referrals. If you're in the B2B world, 84% of business to business sales start with a referral. So having that personal recommendation is huge. But if you don't have it, that's when reviews really come into play. Even if it is a referral, like my wife, she's going to check out your reviews every single time before hiring you for anything. And a lot of people are built the same way. So make sure you've got a proactive step in your business process or at the end of that client cycle that you're asking for those reviews, and make it easy. Even if you just say, hey, can I give you a quick call? I want to ask you a couple of questions about the service, and then capture that and then say, hey, what I heard you say is this, is that accurate? You can kind of manufacture the review if they're not willing to go on Google and make it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, it's so powerful. And that, to your point, there's part of a social, not social experiment, but social proof in there, right? As people see that. And I know, a lot of us look at reviews, because it gives some comfort based on what other people are saying. What keeps you up at night, Brandon?
What keeps me up at night? As an entrepreneur, my mind is always thinking. I love problem solving and solving puzzles, right? So that's what my mind is always thinking about. Right now, as we build out this Fam Central app and go take this to market, it's about how do we enroll as many champions as possible. We just acquired a company called We Are One, WER1.com, and it's an affiliate ecosystem. And we've got, over 10,000 affiliates, which is great. But I want to affiliatize the home service industry. If you think about it, once a home is closed, realtors can give the referrals and actually be compensated. Normally they're not, right? So this is one of the areas that I want to bring builders and contractors and help them really boost and build their business by incentivizing others to send them business. And I don't think many in the home services sector has ever thought about that. There's so many ways to really improve the way that business is done when it comes to home services. And so that's one of the things that keeps my mind solving that puzzle.
What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy is everything. Legacy is, at the end of the day, when you take your last breath, what impact did you have on this world? And, it's, when I was younger, it was about people talking about me. I think that's legacy. As we think about it, is, I want people to talk about me after I'm gone. If I've made enough impact with enough people, that's going to happen. But it's really about impact. I often ask people, if you had 3 cards, income, influence, and impact, what's number 1 to you? To me, it's impact. So my legacy that I want to leave is inspiring as many people as possible to do their best every day.
Well, I love that. I don't know how to build much more on that, Brandon. It's an incredible legacy to live, and your perspective's been amazing. What do you do for fun?
For fun, these days I've been playing a lot of pinball. I used to play volleyball and then I tore my Achilles. So lately I've been playing pinball. There's these pin bars that are out there, and it's a great time, man. I take my mother is 81 years old. She's got early onset Alzheimer, but I can take her to a pinball spot and she can flip the flippers. So
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing lately is pinball, and it's a ton of fun.
It's so fun. I actually just went recently with 2 of my daughters, and as a kid, that was like one of our favorite games, arcade, pinball. That was something to them. They hadn't really seen pinball, but they loved it. It's so fun. It's so fun.
It's a blast. If you go out and do it, there's an app called Stern. One of the biggest manufacturers of pinball machines is Stern, and you can download the app, and there's a map of all the places in any town you're at. So as I travel, I'll go and find a pin bar somewhere, and
That's
I don't
amazing.
drink much, but so it's not about the alcohol; it's about the environment, just having fun. But there's a Dungeons and Dragons game where there's seven. When you get multi-ball, seven balls at once. It
Oh,
is the most intense thing you're going to do with your family. It's fun.
so have you bought your own yet for your house?
No, I'm not into that. Probably should, but I like playing all kinds of different games. Last Friday night, I went with a buddy. There's this place called Starfighters in Mesa, Arizona, and they have over 200 pinball machines. So
Oh, wow.
it's a good time on a Friday night.
Well, that's amazing, Brandon. We can't thank you enough for your time and your resource of information, for all of our listeners. So where can they find you?
You can find me at brandonbarnum.com. If you go there, you'll see some of the different things I help people with. And then check out the FAM project. We'd love to have you on board and help create more unity through community in your local market.
Thank you, Brandon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.